Good evening, everyone. My name's Louise Regan. I'm the chair of the National Education Union's International Committee, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this vital event with voices from Venezuela today. It's organised by the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign and kindly streamed by Arise, a festival of left ideas. 2 months ago today, on the 3rd of January 2026, US forces launched a brutal attack on Venezuela's capital, Caracas, and the basic foundations of international law, uh, killing over 100 people, including civilians, and kidnapping Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro. This outrage was followed by the hijacking of Venezuelan oil shipments and the creation of a naval blockade designed to take over control of Venezuela's main export and deny access to countries such as Cuba, the next target on Trump's list. 2 months on from this attack, as Nicolas Maduro remains in a US jail awaiting a preposterous trial, and the threat of further strikes are used to pressure Venezuela and other governments in Latin America, we are here today to hear from voices in Venezuela about the response of the Venezuelan population to Trump's war drive and to offer our ongoing solidarity. Please let us know in the Q&A section where you are tuning in from. And please also note, and I will go through this again later, but Nicolás Maduro Guerra will be speaking in Spanish and will be translated into English on the relevant channel. So you will need to switch for that speech so you can hear Francisco's interpretation using the option at the bottom of your screen. But when we get on to that part of this evening's event, I will go through it again clearly to make sure people can hear that translation. So we're going to start actually with a recorded video message. So Carlos Ron has just recorded this video for us. It's the former Venezuelan Deputy Minister for North America, President Simon Bolivia Institute for Peace and Solidarity, and a member of the Tricontinental Institute of Social Research. So we're going to start with a video message from Carlos. Thank you very much.
My name is Carlos Ron, and I am from Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. I'm from Venezuela, and today marks 2 months since the illegal and unwarranted military incursion of the United States into Venezuela and the abduction of President Nicolás Maduro and Cilia Flores, First Lady and Deputy of the National Assembly. It is a sad reminder that we're living in a time where a new world order is not being established by principles of cooperation or diplomatic dialogue, but rather by forceful imposition. This is the unraveling of what we at Tricontinental Institute have called hyper-imperialism, a new stage where extreme violence and war are being used to preserve U.S. hegemony. As a result of this act of war against the people of Venezuela, over 100 people were killed, 463 homes were destroyed. There was an impact on important infrastructure in the country, such as warehouses where medicine for renal patients were being stored, or the premises of the National Scientific Research Institute. The attack on Venezuela didn't begin or end on January 3rd. The nature of the contradiction between national sovereignty and imperialism in Venezuela is irreconcilable, in particular because of the wealth that Venezuela sits on. It is the largest oil reserves in the world, but it's also a reserve of other important minerals and rare earth. That is why, at this moment of crisis of U.S. hegemony, the U.S. is leading a hybrid war against Venezuela. Since the beginning of the second Trump administration, there has been a war against the integrity of the Venezuelan people and its leadership. Venezuelan migrants are treated as national enemies in the United States. They're being persecuted. Families are being separated. While the Venezuelan government in turn is being accused of drug trafficking and leading a crime network to harm the people of the United States. None of these claims have been substantiated. And after January 3rd, they all took a backseat to the administration's confession that their real and primary interest in Venezuela was controlling Venezuela's oil industry. In essence, what the United States did was reverse, through a military aggression, its failed maximum pressure policy, which in turn was a self-inflicted damage to the U.S. market by prohibiting the commerce of Venezuela's oil through its illegal sanctions policy. Now they're trying to correct through force that mistake. During the attack against Venezuela, the U.S. displayed extraordinary military might. A country that has been at war for 232 of its 250 years of existence. A country which spends $1 billion per year in its military budget unleashed an attack on a peaceful nation that has not had an international conflict in 200 years of independent history, yet showed significant resistance both by Venezuelan troops and by the Cuban internationalists who defended President Maduro. And this was recognized by U.S. authorities themselves, who have stressed the difficulty of the operation and how close it was even to failure. However, we must also think that the United States encountered a harsh reality when coming into Venezuela. They realized that they had no opposition force to hand the government over to under the military attack, that there was no dissidence in the Venezuelan military that wanted to overthrow the government. Rather, there was strong cohesion on the side of the revolutionary forces and a commitment to maintaining national peace and to maintaining the national revolutionary project. All the leadership of the revolution, political, military, grassroots, communal, all of them closed ranks in support of acting President Delcy Rodriguez. This is a result of years of political consciousness being raised. This is a result of years of true transformations, social transformations, for the dignity of the Venezuelan people. Imperialism's propaganda promoting internal doubts and division has not been successful. Venezuela, my friends, remains under threat. From the very first conversation between the Venezuelan government and U.S. authorities after the attack, the threat was that another attack, even a worse attack, could come. That is why the revolutionary forces have decided to turn to diplomacy as a means to contain the aggression and avoid another incursion. The priorities of the revolutionary government now are to preserve peace, to maintain national stability, and to continue to demand the return of President Maduro and Cilia Flores. Measures have been taken that have been important for the nation, such as a new framework for oil production and the creation of two sovereign funds aimed at the protection of Venezuelan infrastructure and protection of Venezuelan social programs with the revenues of the oil money. There has also been an important law approved, an amnesty law, that seeks to create a climate of peace, a climate of reconciliation that allows for national unity to confront international aggression or the threat of international aggression, and to finally achieve guarantees for national sovereignty. We must continue, however, to demand what is very important for Venezuela, the return of President Maduro and Cilia Flores, because they have been abducted illegally. We must continue to demand their freedom because we know that they have been taken because of their anti-imperialist stance, because of their defense of Venezuelan national sovereignty, and because of their commitment to international solidarity, in particular with Cuba and Palestine. My friends, the Bolivarian Revolution of Hugo Chavez and Nicolás Maduro, the revolution of the communes and of people's power, was not defeated by imperialism. It built profound transformations that have allowed it to remain in power. But at this delicate time, when imperialism is on a war rampage, it is important that we maintain active solidarity with Venezuela, that we accompany the revolutionary forces in defense of Venezuelan sovereignty and peace, that we can accompany processes like the coming popular consultation on March 8th, which is a sign that despite the aggression that Venezuela has undergone, it's still strong and is still going to deepen its revolutionary and democratic process by taking the consultations to the basic grassroots level. Until the return of President Maduro and Ocilia Flores, we ask that every third of the month, we all mobilize to reject this kidnapping, to educate others about what Venezuela means, what the revolution means, about the stance that President Nicolás Maduro and Ocilia Flores took in favor of Venezuela's sovereignty and of internationalism. And I think it is important that we all continue to show support and accompany Venezuela at this moment. It is important for the Venezuelan people to remember that they have friends around the world, that most of the world rejects the aggression against national sovereignty, that most of the world regrets the aggression against international law, and that most of the world will stand with the Venezuelan people in defense of its right to choose its own destiny. Thank you, my friends, for your solidarity today and always. And thank you for remembering President Nicolás Maduro and for remembering Ocilia Flores and for keeping their issue, for keeping their freedom, their demand for their freedom, for keeping it alive and keeping it at the priority of your struggles. Thank you very much.
Well, what a great start to the meeting, a really informative video. So we're going to move on to our next speaker in a minute. I would just say there's quite a lot of things being put in the chat that you could have a look at. There's a parliamentary motion there, so please do take that up with your MPs and make sure that they are looking at that and some other information that you can be looking at. So our next speaker is Fravia Marquez. She's the advisor to Venezuela's National Assembly and from the Cumbé Afro Descendant movement. And we're really pleased that you could join us, Fravia. Thank you so much for giving up your time. It's really important to hear voices from Venezuela at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for always supporting my country and giving us the space to tell our truth. Yes, well, 2 months to reflect on this tumultuous chapter that basically has reshaped global politics, no? Not only Venezuela. 2 months ago, as you know, on January 3, the United States launched a military operation in Venezuela, and they kidnapped our president and Congresswoman Ocilia Flores, the First Lady. And that move has shocked the world, not only the region, and ignited deep controversy over our national sovereignty and international law in general. So in the days that follow, Venezuelans across the country, we talk about this in other webinars, march and protest, very different from what the media wanted to show that Venezuelans were celebrating everywhere. We were demanding the return of our leaders and voicing our grief over the violation of our national autonomy. And people still is asking if civilians were dead during the strikes that accompanied this operation. And of course, civilians also die along with the 32 Cubans and other casualties. We have like Johanna Rodriguez. You can find information online about this woman who died in Latillo the day of the strikes because part of the rocket shoot in his house killed her immediately and also injured her daughter. So this crisis is, as we can see right now, has not stayed confined to South America only. The Middle East, now we have this dramatic escalation unfolded, which is unfortunately and inextricably connected to Venezuela because of the oil and we are seeing a major U.S. and Israeli military campaign over Iran, heavy bombardments, the death of the supreme leader, dozens of children's dead. So that all of these conflicts has reverberate in all the world. People in Venezuela has their heart broken because it is a very unique situation where you are passing through this so unique moment. So even though the people in Venezuela has stayed in peace and we're being very political, like intelligent in the political way to try to keep, as Carlos Ron mentioned in his message, our leaders alive and well, because we have learned from past lessons, like with Diplomat Alex Saab, that when you do something the US don't like, the hostage will be suffering the consequences, and also the family. So we know what are they capable of when they have someone in prison. So we need to be very smart. We are seeing how the oil markets have been disrupted, and how Venezuela is mentioned in every speech now by President Trump, saying that today he just said a few hours ago that thanks to the oil of Venezuela, he's paying already the war he's starting on Iran, and along with Israel. And it pains our hearts that nothing, there is a lot of uncertainty. We need to keep alive the memory, or not the memory, but we need to keep alive our ideology. People are still struggling in the street. People is going out to vote this weekend. We will have another election where communes will vote for their projects, especially because it's March 8th, Women's Day. Projects will be related to this topic. And we keep moving forward, building and rebuilding our strength in the society. Even though, as we look forward, this is not a moment of division, but it's a sober reflection. It's a moment to reaffirm our commitment to peace and to teach the world how diplomacy can navigate the most difficult situations, especially in Latin America. But we are not naive. And we understand that Venezuela was key in order to move ahead with a plan, a geopolitical plan that we could say, and this is a personal opinion, will be financed by Venezuela richness in some way. And that's why I would say the imperial powers there to move fast ahead with other plans. And we invite always the community to keep an eye on what's going on with Venezuela. I guess you already know what is the recent news on President Maduro. They have denied the right he has to have a lawyer, basically, because the lawyers requested OFAC permission to receive funds from Venezuela for the payment, and they approved for both, for Congresswoman Celia Flores and for President Maduro, but then 4 hours later, they denied that they could receive payment to defend President Maduro. So it is impossible to understand what is the basis to, if both the funds are coming for both of them from the same country, how come she can receive, or the lawyer of First Lady can and the other don't? They keep maneuvering because we know they don't have the proofs. We know it's full of lies, and who knows if maybe they don't celebrate the next audience in March 26th. That is in agenda, but later, because things are getting complicated. Other than that, we call on your solidarity. Thank you for these motions you are putting in motion in the parliament with parliamentaries. And please, I will remain attentive to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fravia. That was really, really informative. So thank you for sharing that with us. And it's great that you can be here with us this evening. Just before we go on to our next speaker, I'm just going to ask Matt Wilgris, who many of you will know from the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, to talk to you. As you all know, we're always asking you to think about supporting our campaigns, and Matt's just going to do a little plug for you.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you to our guests from Venezuela, the two we've heard already, and the other two are waiting on the call, giving a much needed voices of actual Venezuelans, I think, to the debate and the discussion on what's happening, and to give a real first-hand account of what it's like to be attacked by imperialism and to continue to resist it. As Louise mentioned, my call to you is pretty simple, really. At the turn of the year, we launched a £10,000 emergency financial appeal to fund our expanded activity. This was just before Trump's attack, and obviously that now needs to be expanded much more. We have raised over £3,000, but if you can, please give £25 of what you can on this call right now. Those of you who are good at maths know that means we need to raise nearly another £7,000. But also the two protests at Downing Street, for example, cost thousands of pounds each. We want to call an action in public on the day of Maduro's trial. That will cost thousands of pounds. And then there's just the massive expanded cost of all the requests we're getting, like Francisco, who'll be on later, many of you know, has literally spoke at dozens of meetings around the country in the last month. We're getting requests for more materials. People who've seen us on protests with us, we've got a new newsletter, new leaflets about Venezuela and Palestine, a whole range of new stuff for our stall. But all of this costs money. So if you can, please do give £25 for what you can afford on this call. And just finally, if you aren't already, and I'm looking at the attendees list, and I know a lot of our members and supporters, and we've had over 100 new individual members this year already, but some of you I think aren't yet individual members of the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign. That is the best way to keep involved. That is the best way to have your input and have your questions answered. So please also do consider joining as an individual. And to all of those who have already, thank you. And if you can give that £25 right on this call, I've just seen two people do it right now, actually. If you can, please do that. Much appreciated indeed.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Matt, and a very important call out to you. But I would also say to any of you in this room that are in a trade union, please make sure and I hope all of you are, please make sure your trade union branch is affiliated as well, and also ask them to make a donation, because we can all give something through the trade union movement. It's a really good way of us doing that and supporting what is happening. And I know my union has done that. I would encourage you to take it out within your own union. We've got another short video now for you. It's from Yusbeles Ramirez, a member of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, a national organizer of young workers in Bolivarian Socialist Workers Trade Union Confederation, the CBST, a Venezuelan TUC-equivalent, and that we're just going to hear from them now, and then we'll move on to our next speaker.
Saludos revolucionarios desde la patria bonita de Simón Bolívar y Hugo Rafael Chávez Frías. Agradecerles por esta ventana de informar la verdad de Venezuela. Por acá les habla Yusbeles Ramírez, responsable de la Organización Nacional de la Juventud Obrera de la Central Bolivariana Socialista de Trabajadores y Trabajadoras de la Ciudad, el Campo y la Pesca. La clase obrera venezolana ha demostrado una gran resiliencia luego del 3 de enero del presente año, donde nuestra patria fue violentada, nuestra soberanía fue violada a través de bombardeos por Estados Unidos, por el imperio de Estados Unidos, ejecutados por órdenes del presidente Donald Trump. Este 3 de enero fue secuestrado nuestro presidente obrero Nicolás Maduro y la primera dama Cilia Flores. Nosotros desde la clase obrera sentimos un profundo dolor porque no ha sido un presidente cualquiera el que han secuestrado, ha sido un hermano de la clase obrera, un hombre que viene de ser chofer, un hombre que viene del mundo sindicalista. Es por eso que la clase obrera nos sentimos aún más comprometidos con esta patria, con exigir la liberación de nuestro presidente obrero y de la primera dama Cilia Flores. Aquí se han ejecutado desde el 3 de enero hasta la actualidad una movilización permanente. Todos los días estamos en la calle marchando, realizando foros, pintando murales en nuestras paredes para hablar y manifestar nuestra exigencia. Nosotros de verdad estamos bastante sorprendidos, bastante impactados de la violación de los derechos humanos, de la violación de nuestras leyes internacionales. El presidente y la primera dama han sido secuestrados. Ellos son inocentes de todas las acusaciones que se les han hecho. Sin embargo, manifestarles a ustedes y al resto del mundo que la clase obrera sigue de pie, que el país sigue en paz, porque es lo que ellos pretendían, que después del secuestro nuestras calles se violentaran, y no, porque aquí ha habido unidad, unidad patriótica, unidad de los revolucionarios en todo sentido. Y hemos mantenido la paz y la gobernabilidad y el hilo constitucional en nuestro país. Y así seguirá hasta que retorne nuestro presidente obrero, porque estamos seguros y convencidos que así será. Ahorita nosotros apoyando rotundamente a la presidenta encargada, Delcy Rodríguez, una mujer extraordinaria, leal, que viene de los ideales de Chávez, acompañado con Nicolás Maduro. Nosotros, las y los venezolanos, estamos confiando plenamente en nuestro Ejecutivo Nacional, en nuestro alto mando político-militar, para seguir adelante, haciendo la salvedad ante el mundo que el presidente constitucional de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, elegido por las y los venezolanos el 28 de julio del 2024, sigue siendo Nicolás Maduro Moros. El presidente Nicolás Maduro siempre ha apostado al diálogo, a la paz. Y en virtud de esto, el reciente 19 de febrero, la Asamblea Nacional ha aprobado la Ley de Amnistía para la Convivencia Democrática. El objetivo de esta ley es la reconciliación nacional, la paz en todo nuestro territorio, en todos los ámbitos, social, político, económico. Las y los venezolanos estamos muy conscientes de la verdadera intención del gobierno de Estados Unidos, y no es otra que ansiar y robar nuestras riquezas naturales. Venezuela posee la reserva más grande de petróleo del mundo, y es por eso que siempre estaremos bajo amenaza, siempre estaremos bajo la codicia de quienes quieren dominar el mundo. Pero aquí no han podido ni podrán. Aquí está un pueblo consciente, un pueblo que va a seguir en resistencia ante cualquier amenaza. Y siempre exigiendo en este momento la liberación inmediata de nuestro presidente obrero Nicolás Maduro y de la primera dama Cilia Flores. Nosotros venceremos.
Great. It's been fantastic to hear so many Venezuelan voices tonight about the situation. And we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Jesus Rodriguez-Espinoza, who's the editor of the Orinoco Tribune. And we're really grateful that you could take time out to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation, Compass. Today, I just want to talk about, because I believe that most of the listeners already know what happened on January 3rd, what has been happening in recent weeks for the last 2 months. And I just wanted to emphasize my talk on an important issue that has been there, which is the issue of betrayal or not betrayal, and this smearing campaign against the Venezuelan authorities and Chavismo also. So I'm gonna base my words on an article that we in Orinoco Tribune wrote a few days ago. We published it on February 23rd, and the name of the article is Rejecting Defeatism, Why Negotiation is Not Betrayal in the Face of U.S. Imperialist Aggression Against Venezuela. So I believe that we try to make a big effort to try to synthesize the most important trends that has been spread mostly from the U.S. and from the White House itself to try to divide Chavismo since the kidnapping of President Maduro and the bombing of Venezuela on January 3rd. So we begin that article comparing the defeatism that was attempted to be imposed against the axis of resistance forces in West Asia, what people wrongfully call the Middle East, and somehow the connection of that defeatism with these criticisms against Venezuela and this attempt to try to present what happened on January 3rd as a defeat. When many of us in Venezuela believe that despite the terrible losses and reality that we face that day in Venezuela, we also believe that we somehow, because of the strength of Chavismo, we force the U.S. to sit with the Venezuelan authorities because they realize, we show them that they were not able to provoke the regime change that they plan to impose on us. So that's something extremely important to see, because that's a fact also, along with the fact that we were bombed and that we suffered a terrible military defeat and the kidnapping of our president. So basically, what we try to address in the most important things is this, a call of betrayal that Delcy Rodriguez and the Chavista leadership this trend that says that Delcy Rodriguez and the Chavista leadership betrayed President Nicolás Maduro, which is a disinformation trend. And I understand a lot of people looking at what happened after January 3rd might believe that that's a fact. But, one has to understand that Venezuela is right now facing an existential threat. And our opinion is that the Venezuelan authorities has been trying to do the best they can to try to contain the U.S. aggression that is still there, and the threats are still there, and prepare and reorganize in order to be prepared for a possible and maybe inevitable new attack by the U.S. in the future, in the not very long future. So there's another trend. Among this trend, there are several things, like, for example, the visit of the CIA director to Venezuela just a few days after the strikes on January, the most recent visit of the Southcom chief to Venezuela, and people, especially mainstream media and the White House, has been presenting that like a betrayal or one of those signs that Venezuela is not longer controlled by Chavismo, but instead it is like a subrogated U.S. colony or something of the sort, which is a big lie. And we invite people to understand that those visits are extremely easy to understand in the taking into consideration the way the Venezuelan military forces were defeated in this unprecedented and atrocious U.S. attack. So another important attack that has been, proof between quotations that has been presented against the new Chavista leadership is that the approval of the reform of the organic law of hydrocarbons. And a lot of people say that it was unconstitutional, which I believe is an expression mostly of far left people. But of course, one has to recognize that we gave a lot of concessions to multinational corporations in order to reactivate the Venezuelan economy, the Venezuelan oil production sector. And of course, that is a strategic retreat that many of us, I'm talking about the Chavista people in Venezuela, understood, and we believe that was a necessary retreat. But many of us also criticized the far left positions, talking about unconstitutionality of this reform, especially because this criticism refers to the alleged fact that in this reform, Venezuela accepted international arbitrations, when in reality, the text of the reform talks about independent arbitrations, and many even Chavista writers and intellectuals wrote about the inconstitutionality of this reform based on that fact, which is a lie, because actually right-wing lawyers and intellectuals, if they exist, has been criticizing the reform because of particularly that independent arbitration particle that was in there. So another criticism is the criticism against the amnesty law that was passed a few days ago, like a couple of weeks ago, and which was something that was already there and was happening somehow, and that has happened before, and we explain that in the depth in this article. But people use everything they want to try to attack Chavismo, and that's terrible, because people outside Venezuela do not know what Chavismo is facing. We are not facing only the U.S. imperialist attack, but we are also facing internal forces within Venezuela from the far left, from the liberal side, and also from, of course, right wingers that are trying to destabilize Chavismo order to control the country, which is the West and the far-right forces. So also the visit of the U.S. Secretary of Energy was also portrayed as another defeat. The possible, and that's something important that might happen, which is the possible visit of President Trump to Venezuela, or maybe the visit of Delcy Rodriguez to the U.S. She has already commented about this, and that's a possibility. And also President Trump has been commenting about the possibility also of visiting Venezuela. So those things might happen. We Chavistas, we prefer that President Trump, prefer between quotations, that President Trump visit Venezuela, because we know that the U.S. is a rogue state, and if Delcy Rodriguez put a foot in the U.S., she might get kidnapped also. So I believe that it's important to highlight those things. And just to close, I want to talk about those things that are there, that I'm talking, that I believe that people outside Venezuela do not know, and that put also is part of this internal front that Chavismo is facing, that people outside Venezuela need to know that is there. I mean, I'm talking about people, right-wingers and even liberals, pushing for the reform of the labor law in Venezuela, which was one of the most important achievements of President Hugo Chavez, and a lot of people in the private sector in Venezuela has been pushing strong for that to happen. And that, if you ask me, is a red flag for Chavista forces that are still supporting the Chavismo leaders, the Chavista leadership. So it's something that we need to try to fight, not only inside Venezuela, but also outside Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela cannot accept a reform of the labor law. Venezuela cannot accept the dollarization, which is another trend that has been pushed in recent days, in recent weeks inside Venezuela. People and economic experts from the left and liberals has been talking about the need of dollarization, complete dollarization of the Venezuelan economy. I mean, the dollar has been circulating for several years already in Venezuela freely, but that is one thing, and another thing, another thing is that Venezuela said the complete dollarization of the country, and abandoning the Bolivar as our national currency. Another important thing is the privatization of PDVSA. There are forces, even among Chavismo, that has been pushing about this idea that the Aranco model of privatization through stock exchanges is the best lever, and there are Chavista alleged experts that has been calling for that to happen, and that's something terrible, and in my opinion is a red flag. the full amnesty for everyone. I mean, we approved the amnesty law, but also the full amnesty is something terrible that has been pushed for several far-right actors, that they want even the worst of the criminals that were put in jail because of political actions, for terrorist actions, to be free. And that also is something that Chavismo, the basis of Chavismo, won't accept. And another important stuff that is happening is the early elections. I mean, a lot of people that do not know the Venezuelan constitution and legal framework are talking about early elections in Venezuela, but the approach that the Venezuelan Supreme Court took when President Maduro was kidnapped, that was that Vice President Rodriguez was appointed as acting president in a special, unforeseen circumstances. And for that reason, the 90 days term or limit that is set in the Constitution to call for early elections do not apply in this case. So it's important for people outside Venezuela to know that we are not going to allow early elections until President Maduro and his wife Celia Flores return to Venezuela. And I believe that those are the most important things that I want to say. Of course, in recent days, there has been a lot of also criticism about the position the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry took in relation to the crisis, the U.S. Zionist attacks against Iran. We have concerns about that. I believe that the majority of the Chavista base did not support that statement that was published and then withdrawn by the foreign ministry. But again, one has to understand those circumstances as part of these very special and complex circumstances that Chavismo is facing amid the still enormous, humongous military threats that we are facing from U.S. imperialism. So I believe that I'm going to stop here to allow everyone to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesus. That was really informative. And we really appreciate you giving up your time. So our next speaker has joined us. Yes, he has joined us. I can see him. Is Nicolás Maduro Guerra. I'm so grateful for you taking time to come and join this meeting. Nicolas is a member of the National Assembly and son of Nicolás Maduro. Thank you so much, Nicolas, because I know you will be very busy, but we really appreciate your time.
Thank you, thank you. I understand the English, but my problem is speak. I speak Spanish slowly. Bueno, buenas tardes. Muchas gracias por esta invitación. Entonces, hoy cumplimos 2 meses, pero han pasado tantas cosas en estos 2 meses. Todo ha sucedido muy rápido, tanto en Venezuela como en el mundo. En el mundo estamos viendo la cara más agresiva del imperialismo, la cara más violenta, más guerrerista, donde quieren imponer el modelo por la fuerza, quieren acabar con las alternativas que sean diferentes a lo que ellos plantean. Y el primer escenario fue Venezuela. Ellos entraron hace 2 meses y secuestraron al presidente Nicolás Maduro. Podemos ver a un Trump antes del 3 de enero y un Trump después del 3 de enero. Cuando hablo de Trump, me refiero a la persona, al presidente, pero también a todo el entramado que hay abajo del poder real en Estados Unidos. Hemos visto, bueno, yo quiero hablar del mundo primero, la agresión a Irán es algo totalmente terrible para la humanidad. tenemos que parar las guerras. Fue un golpe a traición, estaban negociando en Ginebra, ya había preacuerdos, pero siempre hubo la intención de atacar. Nunca, nunca se dejó de lado el no atacar, siempre fue la opción principal. Y ahora vemos que hay una guerra en el Medio Oriente como estamos relativamente acostumbrados, lamentablemente, a los conflictos en el Medio Oriente. Y qué curioso que sea en el Medio Oriente, ¿no? Donde hay petróleo, ¿no? Y que nosotros también seamos un país petrolero y haya sido el primer golpe aquí. Aquí en Venezuela nosotros seguimos firmes en circunstancias fuertes, tal vez un poco diferentes, claro, a lo que vivimos antes del 3 de enero. Nosotros poníamos una señora de un barrio del Valle, me decía, me ponía un ejemplo, me decía, Nicolás, si alguien entra en mi casa y quiere imponer las reglas, yo lo enfrento, nos golpeamos, o sea, resisto. Ahora, si secuestran a mi papá y a mi mamá, ya ahí la situación cambia. Nos toca negociar con el secuestrador. Y eso es lo que más o menos hemos venido haciendo. No hemos barajeado todas las opciones. Claro que sí, hemos visto todo el mapa de opciones. Y este camino que estamos emprendiendo hoy bajo nuestros propios términos, es lo que yo creo que nos queda por hacer para garantizar que nuestro modelo siga adelante, para garantizar seguir en el poder político para las grandes transformaciones que tenemos que hacer. Y para la única manera de que podamos luchar por el regreso de Nicolás y de Cilia es estando en el gobierno. Estoy hablando de la manera más pragmática posible, de la manera más práctica. Ahora también hay principios, tenemos principios. Por ejemplo, nosotros no nos hemos dejado condicionar nuestras relaciones internacionales. Nosotros hemos seguido levantando las banderas del socialismo y ahora estamos, bueno, en una revisión táctica interna para garantizar la hegemonía hacia futuros escenarios, hacia futuros escenarios. El chavismo tiene una gran ventaja, tiene conciencia de unidad, todo el chavismo, desde el alto mando, desde los jefes, hasta las bases más humildes, que están dolidas, sí, que están heridas, que quieren que haya más cosas. Bueno, estamos tomando los pasos que tenemos que tomar para garantizar la paz de Venezuela, la estabilidad del país. Y al final, a ellos no les quedó más opción que venir a negociar con nosotros. Ellos les sorprendió que nosotros tuviéramos el país controlado el mismo 3, 4 de enero. Porque aquí pudo haber pasado cualquier cosa. Aquí pudo haber habido saqueos. Aquí se pudo haber activado las células violentas de la derecha. Aquí la Fuerza Armada pudo haber hecho cualquier cosa. Y no fue así. Todo fue en base a la conciencia que Chávez sembró y que el presidente Maduro ha venido cosechando. Y que nosotros tenemos la obligación de seguir concientizando y organizando al pueblo para cualquier escenario que venga. Lo más importante es que el pueblo tenga conciencia y esté organizado para poder resistir lo que quieran hacerle a nuestro país. A ellos les interesa sumir al país en caos. Ellos juegan al caos. Y mientras haya caos en el país, ellos poder tomar el control. Aquí no hubo caos, aquí hubo una agresión, secuestraron al presidente, pero las instituciones funcionaron. El pueblo se mantuvo en la calle. Y hoy a 2 meses estamos surfeando la ola, como yo he dicho ese término, a mí me gusta, a muchos les gustó, estamos surfeando la ola. Yo no sé surfear. En algún momento me gustaría ir a Australia a surfear o a las playas donde se surfea. Aquí hay unas playas muy buenas en Caracas, en Venezuela. Estamos surfeando la ola, estamos pasando el tsunami con heridas, con dolores, con cicatrices, pero lo estamos pasando sin que subestimemos la capacidad del enemigo de hacer daño, tanto del enemigo imperialista como de sus títeres que quieren hacer daño aquí en Venezuela. No lo subestimamos, para nada. Les damos el tratamiento de esos problemas en su justa medida. Ahora, el pueblo de Venezuela está cansado del odio, está cansado del conflicto político que no lleva a ningún lado. Porque Marx y Hegel, la primera ley de la dialéctica, dice que la lucha de dos tesis, la confrontación de ideas, sale la síntesis de las soluciones a los grandes problemas históricos. Nosotros apoyamos el debate de contrarios pero constructivo. Aquí ha habido un debate estéril de querer destruir al otro. Y ahí el chavismo ha incurrido en errores. Claro que sí. Y nosotros estamos en este momento lanzando la red más allá para que esta oposición que cree en un país democrático, que no apoya la invasión, que ha rechazado el secuestro del presidente y que nos hace oposición porque creen en otro mundo, que rechazan la intervención de Estados Unidos, esa oposición patriota, y nosotros podamos crear el gran consenso nacional para construir un país más unido. Y nos hemos fijado tres líneas. La primera línea es unidad para la paz, para mantener la paz del país, para mantener el orden interno, para que el pueblo se sienta tranquilo. Aquí el pueblo sale a la calle, a las plazas. En carnaval estuvimos, los niños se disfrazaban de mi papá y de Cilia. La primera línea es unidad para la paz. La segunda línea es unidad para que el país avance, para que el país no se detenga. Nosotros tenemos que consolidar el frente económico, el frente democrático, profundizar la democracia. Este domingo tenemos unas elecciones de proyectos que para nosotros son muy importantes. Profundizar el tema democrático, político, reducir la brecha de desigualdad en lo social, brindar educación de calidad, salud. Nosotros tenemos que avanzar en el país, avanzar en todos los planes que dejó Nicolás. Y la tercera línea es mantener viva la llama todos los días de la lucha por la libertad de Nicolás y Cilia, que no caiga, que no olvidemos, tanto aquí como en el mundo. Y yo les pido ayuda, murales, conversatorios, yo estoy a la orden de ustedes. Yo estoy muy agradecido, muy, muy agradecido. Hoy para mí ha sido un día muy sentimental. Me enfermé, me dio un fiebrón, una fiebre en la noche, altísimo. No he podido salir. Ahorita voy a la marcha. Me imagino que después de 2 meses vamos somatizando algunas cosas, porque uno está fuerte, pero el cuerpo por dentro bueno, arreglándose o enfermándose. Pero aquí estamos, firmes, firmes. No tenemos opción. No hay opción. ¿Cuál es la opción? ¿La barbarie? No. ¿Cuál es la opción? ¿La muerte? No, yo me niego, yo me niego. Me niego a eso, nos negamos. La opción es la paz, el diálogo y la convivencia. Y todo pasa. Yo lo decía a unas comunas en estos días. Nosotros estamos en un proceso histórico que yo me atrevería a decir en Venezuela, pues hablando del caso venezolano, que no comenzó Chávez, que comenzó Simón Bolívar con la independencia. Y Chávez lo retomó con un gigante, como un gigante. Y así son estos procesos históricos. Tienen grandes avances, tienen a veces golpes, retrocesos, pero sin lugar a dudas quedarnos firmes, concientizando al pueblo y organizándolo para que el escenario que sea, nosotros salgamos siempre victoriosos. Muchas gracias, quedo atento a cualquier cosa. Dios los bendiga. God bless you.
Oh, thank you so much, Nicolas. Such a powerful contribution. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us this evening. Thank you to Francisco for that fantastic translation. But I just want to say to you, Nicholas, we are with you. We will continue to put pressure on our government to take to the streets and to fight for justice for the Venezuelan people. So we are here with you. We will do all we can. But thank you so much for giving up your time this evening to join us. It was really important. It's very important to hear from people on the ground there for us. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Okay, so we're going to move on now because we've got a couple of other things. So well done to all of you that are staying with us. Reminders, there's lots of things in the chat you need to do. Get your MP to sign the motion, donate, make sure you're a member. Please do all of those things. We've got a short video now from Rangel, who's the General Secretary of the CBST, which is the TUC of Venezuela. So we're going to listen to that, and then we've got our final speaker that will sum up for us. So we'll just have this short video and then we'll finish.
Hoy, 3 de marzo, desde la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, los trabajadores, las trabajadoras de la central mayoritaria de este país, le damos las gracias al pueblo, a los pueblos del mundo, por la solidaridad con nuestro presidente secuestrado por el imperio y nuestra primera combatiente, la diputada Silvia Flores, esposa, primera dama del Estado. Por eso, los venezolanos y venezolanas hemos pedido al mundo todo el apoyo para que nos liberen a nuestro presidente y a nuestra primera dama de la República Bolivariana. Damos todo el apoyo absoluto a la presidenta encargada del Eloína Rodríguez Gómez. La clase obrera, los trabajadores y las trabajadoras, estamos restiados con la gestión de la Revolución Bolivariana. El alto mando de la Revolución Bolivariana ha soportado golpes de Estado, paros petroleros, intentos de homicidio del presidente. Hemos soportado todo y ahora estamos llevando toda la dirección con el presidente secuestrado. Pero aquí hay un pueblo trabajador que se mantiene en vanguardia y muy agradecido con los pueblos del mundo, con los pueblos trabajadores, y ya más temprano que tarde tendremos en nuestro país a nuestro presidente y será la referencia mundial para todos los trabajadores y las trabajadoras. Porque un obrero, un trabajador del metro de Caracas, llegó a ser presidente y será el líder de todos los trabajadores y trabajadoras del mundo. La central bolivariana participa a través de su vanguardia, que son los consejos productivos de trabajadores y trabajadoras, en la recuperación y mantenimiento de todas nuestras entidades de trabajo. 18 trimestres consecutivos ha crecido la economía a pesar de las medidas coercitivas, a pesar del bloqueo, a pesar del secuestro, y ahí estamos los trabajadores y las trabajadoras trabajando día a día, participando en todas las entidades de trabajo. Así que todo este día 3 de marzo para nosotros es un agradecimiento rotundo, contundente a los pueblos del mundo. Hasta la victoria siempre.
What a fantastic video. So we're going to move to our final speaker, who really needs no introduction, but he is the Secretary of the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, Francisco Dominguez. I'm handing over to you, sum us up, and then I will just do a final comment before we finish.
Thank you very much, Luis, and thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Nicolásito. That was fantastic. I think the importance of having Venezuelan voices is crucial to understand for many people in Europe and in other places to understand exactly the complexity of the situation Venezuela faces, especially the Bolivarian Revolution. There is a gigantic smear media campaign against the government of Venezuela, the interim government, the government of led by Delcy Rodriguez, which, it takes all sorts of forms. And I think the intention is twofold. First, divide Chavismo if they can, but also divide the left internationally by sowing doubt so that a section of it, as many as possible, stop supporting the Venezuelan revolution. That's really the purpose. It's sinister, it's nasty, and if you follow the trace as the word it originates in Washington, of course. Where else would it be? This brings me to the second important point, which is the current situation dominated by US imperialism on military steroids. You see the attack on Iran confirms how dangerous not only the situation of Venezuela, but the situation of the whole world is. God knows what the United States imperialism is going to do tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. It might attack just anybody. any miscalculation, any error, any mistake by Delcy Rodriguez might unleash a justification for a second, much worse, military attack against Venezuela. Imagine what this would mean looking at, the situation in Iran. Imagine the amount of infrastructure destruction that, sort of nasty second US military attack will entail. Imagine these also thinking of the possibility, and they're quite capable of this, of the destruction of the oil industry. How will Venezuela recover, after that? Even though the United States might get into a quiet mode, it will not be able to control the situation because the position will be gigantic and it will be a war that will last many years. The damage that will do to everything will be terrible. And then Trump is facing a very severe opposition to his warmongering at home. This is growing all the time. It takes place not only at the level of the people, but it's also taking place at the level of the establishment. Because it is organized, it's producing chaos in the economy of the US and it's producing chaos internationally as well. And nobody knows exactly what he wants. Not even he himself, I don't think, knows. So this is where one of the problems lies. In despair, Trump might find very tempting to have another rapid foreign policy success. And Venezuela and Cuba happen to be just nearby, geographically in the best convenient place from that point of view. So he might be tempted to do this because the situation of Trump is getting more and more politically desperate, therefore it's getting more and more aggressive. And this is very important to understand that the Venezuelan government understands this perfectly okay. Nobody else is in the best position than they to judge exactly what needs to be done. My final point is this: all charges against President Maduro are fake, they're false. There is no drug trafficking evidence, there is no narco-terrorism, and the last one that they put, which is handling weapons, doesn't cut any eyes. So we are in line with Mr. Pollack, who is the leader of the legal team that actually is defending President Maduro and Celia Flores. We are in line with his opinion. Number one, there is no legal basis to try President Maduro and Celia Flores in a US law, in a US court. Not at all. We demand the UK Prime Minister condemns the grotesque violation of international law, which was the attack against Venezuela, the bombing of 4 cities, and the kidnapping, the brutal kidnapping of the President and Celia Flores. It's extremely important that the Prime Minister condemns him and put pressure on him, because the more states, head of state condemning, the more isolated the United States. It's quite important. It's his moral, political, and constitutional duty to condemn this grotesque violation of international law. After all, he is the Prime Minister of the UK and the UK's signatory to the United Nations Charter. And we demand the immediate and unconditional safe return of President Maduro and Celia Flores. And finally, this is a duty for everyone: maximum solidarity with Venezuela. Viva Venezuela. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francisco. What a great way to end. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. I just want to do a massive thank you to all of our speakers. It's been really powerful, actually, this evening to be in a room hearing from people in Venezuela and Venezuelans about the situation and what we need to be doing. And I hope that that this has inspired you to do more to fight for justice for them. And obviously, to all our Venezuelan colleagues, your resistance remains an inspiration to all of us here. So internationally, we are going to continue to call for an end to Trump's sanctions and blockades, and we will add our voice to the global coalition calling for President Maduro to be freed. VSC will be having a campaign action on the day of the trial. Please look out for those announcements. Please make sure you engage with that. And please, finally, I've said it multiple times, join Venezuela Solidarity Campaign. Make sure your trade union branch is affiliated to VSC. Make sure you are donating tonight. Every little bit that you give makes a huge difference and we have to join together collectively to fight back against what is happening globally. A massive thanks to VSC, to the Arise team for putting this event on, and obviously especially to our guests from Venezuela. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. Viva Venezuela, no more wars. Let's have peace, justice globally. Good night, everyone.